Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm also the host of Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight, and I'm the editor of the anthology, which you should run out and buy, called Moms Don't Have Time to, a Quarantine Anthology. All proceeds of that book go to COVID-19 vaccine research. And I'm the editor-in-chief of Moms Don't Have Time to Write, a new publication on Medium, and we're accepting submissions, so please send your personal essays there. And if all that isn't enough, you can follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and my website is zibbyowens.com. Okay, now back to this amazing podcast. Mona Awad is the author of All's Well, a novel. Mona is the author of 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, a finalist for the Scotiabank Giller Prize, and winner of the Amazon Canada First Novel Award. And she also wrote Bunny, named a Best Book of 2019 by Time, Vogue, and the New York Public Library, a finalist for the New England Book Award, and is currently in development as an AMC series written by Megan Moston Brown. She has published work in the New York Times Magazine, Time, Vice, Electric Literature, McSweeney's, and elsewhere. Welcome, Mona. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss All's Well.
Thank you so much for having me, Zibby. It's an honor.
Oh, you have such a great cover, by the way. Were you so happy with this? Tell me the story.
Yeah, I was so happy with it. I was really freaked out by it, and I thought that was good. But it's still playful. You know, I love all the colors. But I think they wanted to do something where, the image embodied both theater, which the book takes on, and then the story of this woman's pain. So the pills are what make up the mask.
It's so cool. Yeah, I almost didn't notice at first when I first got it, and I was like, oh my gosh, those are pills. Anyway, yeah. It's very cool. Well, I guess on that note, I should have started with this, but could you tell listeners what your book is about, and also what inspired you to write this? I know it's your third novel. Why this one? Why this topic? And why now? Anyway, that should take us for a while.
Well, so I think basically I'll start with just talking a little bit about the book. So it's about a theater professor at a New England college. Her name is Miranda Fitch, and she is suffering from chronic pain that no one believes she has. And then she is just hell-bent on staging this student production of Shakespeare's All's Well That Ends Well. But the students are mutinous, and they want Macbeth. And so Miranda makes a bargain with dark forces to ensure that her show goes on. And then she ends up living this kind of Macbeth off stage. And how I came to write it, it's sort of a dark, supernatural comedy about Shakespeare, pain, and revenge. And I was going through chronic pain of my own when I started having this idea that I wanted to write about pain. I was injured. I hurt my hip really, really badly and had to have surgery. And then I had a really rough recovery. I hurt my back in the process of recovery. So I ended up getting all these neurological symptoms down my legs. It was the worst. And it made just everyday tasks so hard suddenly, just driving in your car, going grocery shopping, sitting down. All of those things felt suddenly like insurmountable tasks. And another surgery wasn't an option. So I was just kind of in this weird rehab limbo, going from physical therapist to physical therapist, consultations with surgeons, consultations with physiatrists. And I was feeling pretty helpless and pretty powerless. And at the same time, I was a graduate student and I was teaching and I was reading Shakespeare. And I just fell in love with the plays because they have these reversals of fortune that feel very, very exciting. And they were very exciting to me in my situation. And I fell in love with All's Well That Ends Well. There was just something about the play that really ignited my imagination. The heroine was both villainous, but she was also heroic. And she's so powerless at the start of the play, but it's a fairy tale. And she ends up taking this agency and turning the world of the play upside down. And she's able to kind of fulfill her heart's desire through this kind of nebulous, mysterious magic. And I just thought that was really fascinating and wanted to explore that story through the story of a woman who is, she's desperate to stage it because she wants All's Well That Ends Well. She wants a happy ending for herself, but she has to live this other kind of narrative in her actual life. Yeah.
Wow. So did you have in your life when you went through your pain, a mark, somebody who actually was a partner, Miranda has a physical therapist type person. I think he's a physical therapist who actually believes her and is like, we're going to do this and we're a team. And she's so relieved after so many, misdiagnoses and attempts and whatever. And not that it was necessarily working, but just to have that validated. Did you feel like there was someone out there who finally you were like, oh, thank God, this person gets me?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a few of those moments, with physical therapists. I feel like it's just one of those things where it's so hard to cure chronic pain. It's so hard to cure people who are suffering from injuries, especially when they're complicated injuries. And let's face it, most of us are not textbook, right? So it's like, it's really, really hard to actually follow just this kind of physical therapist path of recovery and actually get better. Most people, I don't think, follow that course exactly, right? So it was always hard. I had people who were really well-meaning, but they were ultimately kind of at a loss because sometimes I think it's just a matter of time, for these kinds of injuries. But it was so scary because I didn't know what to do for so long. And I feel like there's so many people who are in that position. I met so many people like that just in the waiting rooms of these physical therapy offices, all of us just, kind of going through the motions and hoping for the best. But, it usually just doesn't work out the way that they hope it will,
Well, I'm really sorry that that's been a part of your life. I mean, that's really tough, especially I feel like there's something with the word chronic, like it just sounds so bleak, like it's never going to lift. Like this is it, like a death sentence. Yeah. It sounds terrible.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it kind of is, but then the interesting thing is I think a lot of it is just the fear of the unknown and the fear that I'm going to have this thing forever and it's never going to change. And the one thing that really helped me, apart from the Shakespeare plays, which I have to say really helped me, it helped me to get lost in another world. It helped me to get lost in theater. It got me excited about life. And that was really good for me. But I think too, just meditating, paying attention moment to moment, you realize that it's not true that things always stay the same. Things are always changing. And that was a real comfort because I realized, no, what I'm feeling right now, it's not going to be this way forever. It will shift, and that's good.
Yes. Thank God.
Yeah.
One thing I found really interesting is how the pain affected all of Miranda's relationships and how, you start at the very beginning by, showing the contrast of the man in the ad to the loving husband of the woman in the YouTube ad who's just like waiting patiently and smiling. And you're like, that person's not being like, I'm at a loss here, like I'm giving up. And even the friend who they used to be close. And then suddenly she's like, maybe have you considered this isn't real, that kind of thing. And like just how people keep failing her, honestly. And like everybody is disappointing her in some way. What about that? I mean, that also like compounds the isolation factor.
Yeah, I think that was part of what made me want to explore pain in the story is just to explore that loneliness, of what it feels like. And to some degree, I think we all have it. It's not just physical pain, but it can be emotional pain or mental pain, right? There's something very isolating about it because I think when you start to share it with other people, yes, they'll take it on. Yes, they'll listen to you if you have good friends and family around you. But what can be scary, and what I was interested in exploring with this story, is kind of like there's a shelf life to it. Like there's something finite about it. There's a limit, basically, to how much other people can bear your particular pain. And with that limit, when you come up against it, it is a very isolating experience and it can be very scary. So I was very interested in exploring that and hopefully people who read it, who are going through that can connect to that and find some solace in that.
Have you read Eleanor Henderson's new memoir about her husband's chronic pain and how people think it's part psychiatric and part physical and they don't really know? You have to read it. You guys should do an event or something together because she is the caregiver in this situation and you're like more of the you're the primary person. I mean, hers is memoir. I mean, whatever. I think it would be interesting. It would be a very interesting discussion. Let me just say.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like I've been reading a lot about pain, and I think I like that because the way, especially like how you do it here, it's like you get the reader to really feel it, right? You like wake up the reader, and you can do that in many ways. But I think by putting someone in a place of physical pain through your words is like
you can't not respond to that. You can't not feel it. And that's part of like the magic of great writing is like for how you put us in the shoes of someone who's really suffering and make us suffer for a little bit. And, yes, we can close the book and walk away, but that lingers, it doesn't just stay inside the pages.
Yeah. I think that was really important to me to kind of create that experience so that the reader really understands what that might be like, what it might be like to kind of move through your life in chronic pain. And to do that, it's so weird because, and I'm sure you've had this experience, I'm sure everyone has, but when you're in pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, and you're trying to communicate that pain to someone else, language really feels like it comes up short, It's so I used a lot of sentence fragments. I used a lot of kind of absurd metaphors like you do. Like Miranda says her pain is red and it's throbbing and it's like there's a chair on her foot, And somebody else hears that and it sounds like crazy, right? But it's the closest she can come to communicating it to somebody else. And that communication is so important because it's the only way that you're going to be able to make your experience of your pain understood to someone else so that they can help you, right? Or at least so that you cannot be alone in it. And there's something so dark about the fact that language comes up short because it's all we have. But then there's also something funny about it too. And I tried to lean into that a little bit, that it's funny that she's saying red, it's throbbing. And there's a chair with a fat man sitting on it on my foot.
No, you have like this funny sense of humor. And I feel like I would be very nervous to be a student of yours ever again. I feel like you're like the person like sitting backstage, or as well as Miranda. Maybe this isn't you, but definitely finding the humor. I loved when, I think it was Trevor, one of the actors, was, you're like, you'll have to do that as an actor. And then Miranda's like, pah! Like she wants to laugh out loud that like this pathetic student is actually an actor. I don't know. It's just funny. I felt like I was like in the teacher's lounge finally.
Oh yeah. Totally. And I love those kinds of teacher's lounge, like stories from the other side of the desk, because it's weird. Like I was a student for a long time and I felt like I had one understanding of what it's like to be a teacher. And I think I felt like teachers were pretty powerful, in some ways, like they certainly thought that they had authority in the room. But it's so strange when you are actually a teacher, how you start to realize like how it's a very vulnerable position to be in. There's only one of you and there's a group of them, and they're young. And I think young students have more power than they know. Young people have more power than they know. And that's interesting. It's interesting to observe that as a teacher, having been a student, So I was interested in kind of exploring that power dynamic. The teacher is powerless, but she has the appearance of having power, but she does not. And maybe she rebels against that sense of powerlessness by thinking these dark thoughts about her students, right?
I hate this. It seems like so ridiculous, but back in the day, like when I was in my 20s, I was a Weight Watchers leader. So I would go around all these meetings, and I used to be like a member, right? When I was like pre-wedding, whatever, I had nothing else. Anyway. And there you like idolize the leaders, right? And then finally I was the leader and I was like standing there with all these people looking up at me and I was like, okay. Now what do I do? And then I was so upset to realize that some of the other leaders would do what you're saying. And they would be like, oh my gosh, can you imagine, that person, she comes every week. She's never lost a pound. And I'm like, you can't talk about the people like this. Like, it was heartbreaking.
I know. Yeah. It feels like such a betrayal.
Yes.
It's true.
Totally, really, yes.
And it's funny too, because they have their own life. Students have their own life and they're talking about you probably. Yes. Like the whole story about you. So yeah, it is a really strange position to occupy, being in the front of a room talking to a group of people who are just supposed to listen to you. You're supposed to be the person that facilitates and knows things. Yeah. And maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know as much as you think you do once you stand up there, right? It's kind of like theater.
Vulnerability mixed with power, like which will win,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you've pursued all these degrees. You have a PhD and An MFA. Don't you have like a PhD and an MFA and something else in English or something? Yeah.
I have a master's in English for for somebody who dropped out of high school 3 times. Not bad, huh?
What? Why did you drop out of high school 3 times?
I don't know. I just couldn't, for whatever reason, I couldn't be in the classroom when I was a teenager. It was just uncomfortable. I felt really out of place, and just like I didn't really feel like I belonged, and I just couldn't do it. So I would always leave, and I ended up having to go to an alternative school. This was in Canada, so alternative schools were free at the time. Thank God for them, because I went to one and I was able to finish my senior year. And then I went to undergrad, and then I got more serious about reading. But I needed that patience. Like I needed more support, I think, than like the school system at the time really provided.
How did your family deal with that?
It was really hard because I was a reader. I was really interested in books. I would skip school to go to the library. I would skip school to smoke cigarettes in my bedroom and read, So they really struggled with it. But my mother was really patient with me. And so thank goodness, I was able to kind of find another situation where I could finish. And then in undergrad, I got really into reading, and then I wanted to keep studying. I kind of started to feel at home in it. But it took a while, So I'm very sympathetic. I think that might have something to do with my fiction. I'm really interested in outsiders, and I'm really interested in that feeling of unbelonging that a lot of people have. I think we all feel it at certain times in our lives. We just feel like we don't belong. I'm interested in stories that explore that feeling, that perspective.
Well, that's great, because I'm sure that will be such a comfort to everybody who has ever felt that way, in one way or another. Wow. So that's when you discovered reading as much. But when did you start writing? When was your first attempt at a novel? Was that were you smoking cigarettes and also writing in a journal, or what was?
Yeah, I was writing my sad girl poems, and I was writing a lot of skits. I loved theater, even as a teenager, even going in and out of high school. I loved theater so much. And I would write for the theater club that would put on plays. They would ask me to write, and I would write skits for them. So that always excited me, just dialogue excited me. So in my teens, I think I got into it, but I didn't get really seriously into story writing, I think, until later on, I think, until I discovered fairy tales. And then I started understanding the power of those plots and the power of those conflicts and tensions that fairy tales explore. That's when I really wanted to start writing novels, because the magic and the possibility in them really excited me.
Wow. That's amazing. So what was the story of selling your first book then? How did that come to be? And by the way, have you ever thought about just actually acting yourself? I feel like you would you seem like you would be an actress.
Yeah, I was so into it. I love giving readings, and that was the one thing about high school that I loved. I loved theater. But I think I got really shy, and then I wanted to be more behind the scenes. But it's a true joy of mine. And so that's why I think All's Well was such a pleasure to write, is because it explores. It really is a love letter to theater.
You should put it on as a play, the book.
Yeah, I know.
That would be so meta and cool. Right?
It would be so fun. I would love to do that, honestly. But yeah, my first book, I was working full time as a bookseller, and I was writing on the side, writing at night, writing in the morning. I had this idea. It was so funny. I remember writing in a notebook, I had the idea, 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl. I knew the title. And I wrote to myself, this was in September of 2009. I wrote, "You will finish this by December." It took me 6 years to finish it. So yeah, it was so delusional. I thought it would take me 3 months. It did not. I applied for an MFA because I wanted for a funded MFA, because I felt like I would really dedicate the time to it, time that I didn't have because I was working full time. Although honestly, I always ask myself, if you hadn't gotten into the MFA, would you have finished? I would have. I just think it would have taken me maybe a little longer. But I did get in, and I wrote for those 2 years. And then when it was over, I had the book, and I sent it out to agents and got an agent. And then we sold it the fall
That's
after
really
graduating. Yeah, so it's good.
And then you tell me about your middle novel. Now I have to go back and read these ones.
Yeah. So Bunny, Bunny was crazy because Bunny was real leap from 13 Ways. 13 Ways was very realist. It's about body image. It's about women and body image. And it was short stories that tell the story of this one woman kind of moving through a body image struggle and how her body image kind of affects all these different aspects of her life. But Bunny was all about my love of fairy tale and horror and like mean girl movies like in the 80s and the 90s, like Heathers,
Yeah.
Craft and Pretty in Pink and all that. So it's kind of a tribute to that. And it's a tribute to outsiders. It's about an outsider who gets sucked into this clique of girls who call each other Bunny. And that one I wrote really, really fast, but it was really scary because it was such a leap. And I wrote that as a PhD student. That was because I was a creative writing student. So that was my thesis was Bunny.
Wow. So is this your only non-school deadline focused manuscript?
It is my only one. It is my only one. And it's weird because it's true. I had a deadline that the institution gave me, to finish. And that was helpful. But to be quite honest, the thing that really worked to get Bunny done, I highly recommend this for anyone struggling with deadlines, with accountability, with just kind of being motivated to keep going with your project. My friend and I we drew up this contract. It's based on this contract that Amy Bender has that she published it in O Magazine a while ago. It's a writer's contract. And you get somebody else to be your mentor. You set deadlines for yourself in the contract, and then you're accountable to your mentor each day. So my friend and I did this over the course of the summer, and I said, I'm going to write 1,500 words a day. And when I'm done those 1,500 words, I'm going to text you that I did it. And I have to do it every day. And so I would do that. And then she did the same. She would text me and I would, so we were kind of accountable to each other. And we got drafts done of our novels that summer that we did that. And it was so helpful to have a friend to be accountable to. More so than the college, I would say.
Did she sell her book?
She did. Yeah, she did sell it, which is, so cool. We both sold them, I think, around the same time, too.
Aw. That's so cute.
Yeah.
They're like cousins, these books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have those people in your life. Like they don't even need to be writers, but just creative people, I think, who understand like how important it is to have those deadlines and to be accountable just to get a project done, because you can really talk yourself out of it. You know what I mean? Like you can have bad days where you're just like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't want to do this. I have so many other things to do. Should I really make time for this thing? Mm-hmm. Yes, you should, because it's what you really want to do, right?
It sounds so simple and yet so powerful.
It's so hard, but it's not. Yeah, it's so simple.
Like I know I want to do it, but do I really want to do it today? Or like, is this the afternoon? I don't know. I think I'll wait till tomorrow. So what are you working on now?
So now I'm working on, I kind of see Bunny, All's Well, and this new one as a trilogy. They all have the fantastic in them in some way. This one is called Rouge, and it's about a woman who gets sucked into this really sinister beauty cult in California. And it's got a lot of elements of horror, but it's got fairy tale in it too. Mm-hmm. It's been really fun to work on.
There is a book I did 2 years ago called Rouge. Not I did. I interviewed the guy. Is that okay? You can still do it. His name is Richard Kirschenbaum.
Yeah.
Just in case there's any intellectual property issues or something.
Oh, yeah. No. But that's interesting. Yeah, it's so compelling, like the idea of red, but in French. The character is she's French Canadian, as I am.
Oh, okay. And I know you just already gave a lot of advice, but any other advice you have for aspiring authors?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the advice that I gave myself when I was working on Bunny, which was my second book and was a big departure. And I think because it was a big departure, it felt very scary and I doubted myself a lot and wanted to give up on it a lot. And my negative self-talk was, nobody would want to represent this book. Nobody would want to publish this book. Nobody would want to read it. And so what I ended up doing just to counter that was I just told myself, okay, let's say that's true. Do you still want to write it? Like, are you still interested in this story? And the answer was yes. And when the answer was yes, I realized that I wanted to tell the story independent of the outcome. And that was so empowering because it was really about the the process. It was really about the journey of writing the story. It was about the story itself. And I think that that's really it's a good question for a creative person to ask.
Love it. Well, my advice to you, if you choose to accept it, I think you should write this as a play. And I think you should produce it this year while you're up in Syracuse in the dead of winter when you're despairing about the weather, which how can you not? So I think that should be like your side project, and you can get all the students to produce it for you.
Oh my God, I love that idea. It could really be very meta then.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then you could like live stream it if you wanted. And yeah, just like link it to your book sales page and stuff.
Yeah, it could be great for the paperback release in the summer. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great. I love that, Zibby.
Yeah, go for it. I love it. All right. Well, I'll work on the playbills and you can do the casting. I'm kidding. I do think that would be fun for you to do. I mean, I think that would be fun for someone to consume that you do. And I don't know if it would be fun for you. It might be terrible, but
I think it would be really fun. I think it would be an adventure.
Yeah.
And that I'm up for that.
Nice.
So
yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you again for being so flexible with timing, and congratulations on All's Well. And I feel like I need to keep this in my like, what do you call it? Where I keep the meds and, lotions and potions, cosmetic cabinet,
Absolutely. No,
You should really make some little pouches, like some pill boxes and stuff.
Oh yeah, we did.
You did? Oh, okay, good. Great. Okay, good. I'm out of ideas. All right. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
It was a total pleasure.
Oh, good. Okay. Enjoy your new home. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.